see. Welcome everyone to today's Keptn user group. The title today is Release Readiness Validation with Keptn for the Austrian online banking software. My name is Andy Grebner and my guest today is
Hi Andy, servus.
Servus. So at least the first thing you learn in case you are non-Austrian or non-German speaking, Servus is the way we greet each other. And the nice thing is with Servus, this works for hello and goodbye and for in between as well. Right? Hey, Marco, I mentioned it earlier, but I want to mention this again. Andreas Lind, he was supposed to co-present as well with you. Unfortunately, he cannot make. I'm sure we'll make sure we'll have you again back on the user group at a later time. Now, remember, everybody that is listening, Keptn user groups are really from users for users. That means we want to really learn how users are adopting Keptn in various use cases. And Marco, maybe to your person, can you just quickly give an introduction on what you do exactly, besides being a release automation engineer, but just some background on you?
Yeah, I'm release automation engineer for an Austrian banking company. My daily business is to develop, start load tests, analyze load tests, analyze some problems in production in the cloud environment. Yeah, and developing the company-specific test library for Chemita.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I would say with this, we give it a go. We have a combination of some slides and a live demo because we really want to see what you have been doing. If for those newcomers to the Keptn project, there's a lot of links you can see on the page, whether it's the website, follow us on Twitter, star us on GitHub, and also we have a Slack channel, slack.keptn.sh. We also have a Slack channel on the CNCF Slack workspace. You can also find us there. Most activity, however, is on our specific Keptn Slack channel. Marco, if you can do me the favor, maybe let's switch to the next slide because I am kind of using you today as my remote automation tool in terms of forwarding slides. Marco, I think it was a little over a year ago when we got on a call and then you actually showed me what you've been doing with Keptn. And I said, this is a great story. And I then took the time to write a little blog post about how you are using Keptn to automate the release readiness for Raiffeisen Software and the kind of banking software that you guys are building there for the majority of the Austrian banks. So everyone that is listening, if you want to read the blog post that we wrote back then, it's on Medium on the Keptn publication. But for me, what is interesting is it's been a while now since we wrote the blog and things have changed. I think back then you were using probably Keptn 0.8 something or even older. I don't remember what you started with.
I think older.
Even older, right? Yeah. You've been, was it 0. I don't remember which version you started with.
No idea.
Yeah, but you were one of the early adopters, and I think some bruises as well that came out of it. But with this, we make Keptn stronger. What I would like to see now is kind of, Marco, where is Keptn today? And then kind of also walk a little bit about lessons learned and just some best practices. And this is when we go back and forth. But I would like you now to give me a little update on what has happened since we published a blog.
Okay, good. At first, I'll give you a short overview of our continuous test tool stack. As you can see, we are using and providing tools for monitoring, test automation, and continuous test. Our load test tool of choice is Apache Chemita with a company-specific library triggered by our continuous test Jenkins and evaluating the results with Keptn. Yeah. How our Keptn looks today is a nice slide, but I want to show you our Keptn bridge live here. Okay. Here's our Keptn bridge. We have 4 projects for 2 environments, the DRB pass and the smart pass. Each environment has a test project, in this case DRB test and smart test. The test projects are for checking new metrics or check if the evaluation works after a Keptn upgrade and so on.
That's actually a great, I think, best practice already, right? Because every time you're playing around and extending your SLIs and SLOs, or as you said, right, you're upgrading. You want to first validate if everything is still valid. This could also be interesting as feedback. I mean, creating a test project is one option, but I would probably want to give this also back to the product team, to the Keptn team, and see if we something like kind of like dry runs, test runs. How would this look like if I would now run it without actually then storing the data and messing up with your history? But that's a good point.
Would be nice. So we do not have a bad history with these test runs.
Yeah. I'll take some notes.
Nice. Okay. This is our Keptn Bridge dashboard. Later more. I will switch to our Jenkins Pipeline job. And let's have a look on the last full load test on first day with status warning, yellow, and we have some different stages. First stage, build initialize. This is to manage our test clients in the Jenkins environment. Then Keptn initialize, later more. Executing the load test, sending, triggering the events, the Keptn events, and check our log volumes in Splunk. Behind the scenes is a Jenkins pipeline with the Keptn library in version 5.1. Here you can see the stages, the different stages, build, initialize, and the first Keptn relevant stage, Keptn initialize. Here you can see the Keptn init methods with some Keptn specific parameters, the Keptn project, the Keptn service, the Keptn stage, and the shipyard file, the shipyard.yaml file.
Yeah. And maybe Marco, to this one, just for people that are not aware of it. So this Keptn Jenkins library is available on our Git repositories, and it really just allows you to easily link your Jenkins pipeline with Keptn, like the Keptn init. Make sure that first of all, Keptn is available, is reachable, and it will automatically make sure that the project, the service, and the stage is there. And if not, it will automatically create that project with that shipyard file. And the shipyard file is the file that defines all the automation sequences that Keptn provides through this project. So Git repository, also in the artifact hub, I believe, and the big point here, and we'll highlight this later on as well. Christian Kreuzberger is actively working on continuously improving it, and in case you are existing Keptn users of that library, then make sure to check out the latest pre-release that is out there, because actually, certain things have been fixed that we have found as you upgraded to Keptn 0.12. This is why you have this configure monitoring here in as a special function, and this is now part of the latest Keptn library that you guys are still building in, but we have kind of implemented this on the fly, right?
Yeah. Okay. Good. And we also add the resources, the SLO file, SLI file, and the dynatrace conf again. Before starting the load test, we are creating a start timestamp for the Keptn evaluation, executing the load test, and after the load test has finished, we will create an end time string for the Keptn evaluation. Yeah, last Keptn stage is to create a Keptn context to send with the method send start evaluation event with our start time and the end time. And we also set the build result, the Keptn the Jenkins build result with the Keptn evaluation, with the Keptn result.
Cool.
Yeah.
So to recap, just you have in the pipeline, you do the Keptn init, then you take the timestamp of the load test, you run the test, you take another timestamp, and then you trigger a Keptn evaluation sequence, basically saying, hey, Keptn, I'm done with my load test. I know that start and the end time frame. Now do your evaluation. And depending on that result, you also set the Jenkins build result based on whatever Keptn says, either green, yellow, or red.
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can see the status here in the builds. Let's see how does it look like in the Keptn bridge. This is our evaluation. We can open the evaluation board and have an overview of our SLIs. Okay, of the top 10 SLIs, I can also show all of them. Okay.
It's quite an
I like
impressive
this.
list. Yes, it's
Yeah,
quite an
I like this view because I've on one page every SLI with a color yellow, green, or red, and if I get over an SLI, I see okay, the value is 19.73. What is that CPU usage millicore, and I need 18.15 to pass this SLI. So many metrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also have, can you explain on the bottom, on the x-axis, what are these numbers on the chart?
These are the IDs from the Jenkins builds. This is with this ID, I know, okay, this was Jenkins build number 450. And I have also a link to the Jenkins job back here.
Perfect. And this is also done automatically by the Jenkins library. And folks, in case you're interested how this works, it's rather straightforward. When you are triggering a Keptn sequence, you can pass so-called labels, and you can see the labels up there. One of the labels that is very magic is the build ID label, lowercase b, uppercase I, and the build ID will then be used as the x-axis description. By default, if it's not passed in, it's just a timestamp, but like using something like the job execution ID or whatever else you have, right? If you integrate this not with Jenkins, but with some other tools, and you have, let's say, a build ID, a build number, then this is typically a thing. And then the job URL, this is also, you can not only use labels with name value, but if the value is a link, it will also provide the link to click on it, and then you get back to that external tool. Perfect.
Okay. The next step is the SLI breakdown. Here I can see the failed and the warning SLIs and see, okay, in this case, app signature documents, result is failed, can open compared with, that means the relative threshold is okay. Yeah, 1.9% slower, that's okay. But our absolute threshold is failed. And yeah, in this case, this is a known issue in this environment. And for me as a slow tester, I can say, okay, check, that's we should repair that, but it's not so big problem for the release.
Can I ask a quick question here?
Yeah.
The SLI name here is RT app signature push time documents. Is this basically the response time, I guess, from a
Yes.
particular test step?
Yeah, that's the response time from a request from the app services in signature UI services and the request push time documents.
Okay. And then also for people to explain, because I mean, you mentioned it nicely, because with Keptn, we allow you to do two types of comparisons. You can either say a metric should always be, let's say, faster or better than XYZ. Like in your case, it should be faster than 500,000 milliseconds. But you can also do a relative comparison. And relative means it compares it to the previous good builds. So with this, it's a nice way of saying, I want to detect regressions, so I should not get slower than 20% to the previous build, but I also want to make sure I'm not hitting a certain magic threshold, right? And that's really important because a lot of people think are not aware of the combination that we provide this.
Yeah, the relative threshold compares with the last, I think, with the last three successful, successful evaluations. Yeah, this is how our Keptn evaluation looks like. It's a big report, but some month or some years ago, I'm looking for every single request manually. Okay, is this okay? Is it good? Is it bad? Yeah, Keptn would be here very helpful.
Yeah. So Keptn is automating for you the retrieval of the values. In your case, they come from Dynatrace, but on the Dynatrace side, you have the context from your test steps because you have the integration from JMeter to Dynatrace passing over context. This is why you have all of this response time per test step. I also see PG CPU. These are, I guess, CPU from processes, right?
From the container. Yeah.
Yeah, from the
container.
You have down there TM. What are
TM,
some of
that's the active database connection. The maximum of the active database connection. Then we can see if there is, I think the maximum is 50. They have maximum 50 connections each process, and if the connections are maximum bigger than 20, it should be a warning. And if it's bigger than 45, we have a big problem.
Yeah.
We should look what's happened.
But that's great. So basically, you run a load test and you want to make sure that during that period of the load test, you're never getting into a situation where your application is in the need of opening and keeping a lot of database connections open for too long. And this is great because if you run a new test and you see if the database connection behavior has changed because your application holds on to a connection for too long before it releases it back to the connection pool, you immediately get a warning here or even an error.
Yes. Yeah. What do we have? Active connections. Active connection, CPU usage, database calls. How many database calls to a single service? That would be interesting because if a service has in our standard load test thousands of database calls or 100,000, that would be a problem for our database.
And here especially, I think it's great. You don't have an absolute limit, but you want to see if there's a difference between the previous runs. That's why you just have the relative numbers. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Okay, and some garbage collection metrics, heap suspension, thread count, JVM, used memory. Yeah.
Wow.
Many metrics.
Very cool. And so, and in the end, Jenkins is triggering the test, is doing the evaluation, it reports it back to Jenkins, and then the Jenkins pipeline goes green, yellow, or red, saving you a lot of time because this just now happens fully automatically.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah.
And after the evaluation with Jenkins, Keptn, and so on, the last thing is to create a load test report in our conference. This is to collaborate with the management, with some other teams who has not the permission to view the Jenkins reports, or the Keptn reports. And okay. This is a short screenshot of our conference with our release decisions, the different reports with status green, yellow, red.
Awesome. And yeah, sometimes PowerPoint online is a little tricky. I've noticed that myself. I think if you want to start from a particular, here we go. Just it goes.
Okay. Yeah.
Almost there. Hey, quick question. Okay. So this status update is also pushed from Jenkins at the end of the pipeline?
No. It's created by me manually. This is a standard form for a load test report with an own chapter, Keptn evaluation, with the link to the Keptn, the ID, the ID from the Keptn, from the Jenkins pipeline, and the status in the color.
Cool. We could even think about, like kind of what's the future. I guess with Keptn, we could even automate that at the end. Make a call to Confluence, because Confluence pages can also be edited through the Confluence API. I'm pretty sure we could even figure that out.
We have a story in our backlog to automate the load test reports.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. But I think it's very important to create a report also in Wiki, Confluence, whatever, because even the management do not look at Keptn or Jenkins. They want to see a report. And yeah, if we could create the report automatically, that would be nice.
Yeah, I would say we will put this on the action. I mean, you already have it in your backlog. We will come back and do another user group once you have managed it, because I think that's a great use case that we can publish the data to external data sources. And I assume a lot of organizations are using Confluence products like Confluence. So we should definitely add this to the list. I'm not sure. Rob is actually here as well. I see, Rob, you're listening. This could be another cool use case partnership with Atlassian. But how you maintain? Oh yeah, Rob is actually asking a question. That's a good one. He says, Marco, you may show this, but how are you maintaining this long list of SLIs and SLOs, especially as the app architecture changes? So that means, right, you have a very long list of metrics of SLIs. How do you manage it? How do you keep it up to date so that it constantly works?
It was much time at the beginning of Keptn. but in the daily business, we have minutes in per release to manage the SLIs or keep them up to date.
Okay.
This we do not have. We do not spend much time in this because
that
it
means,
works. It works.
yeah. So that means, I mean, in the beginning, it's obviously an effort to get that list, but once you have it, it seems as you're running constant builds, there's not
Yeah,
that much of a
yeah,
change.
yeah.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is to create the metric list.
Yeah. And I saw in your case, and this could also be some great feedback for us on the Keptn side, most of your SLIs had a relative score, a relative threshold from 20% and 50%. I think that seems to be like your default. And right, does this at least it looked like it.
Yeah, on the technical metrics, that on the response time metrics, the default is 10 and 20%. But on the technical metrics like CPU usage or suspension time, it would be 20 and 50%.
Okay, because I'm wondering, I know some of the Keptn core developers are also on the line. If we can also, if you have any stories for future to come up with some defaults for certain categories of SLIs and SLOs, that would be nice. Yeah. There's another question, Marco. It says, are you satisfied with the weighted score calculation? Do you use these aggregated scores in automatic release gating?
It depends on the release. It depends on the environment. Sometimes the Keptn evaluation is status failed, red, with a score 60 or lower. But I could explain the response times with some issues on the environment. That means, yeah, there was a problem, but it's not a problem for the release.
Okay. Would it then make sense for us to also think of being able to comment in Keptn, maybe even on a result, and sometimes and also overrule the final result, like a human overruling? You can say, hey, you know, it failed, but the reason why it failed is because these two metrics are worse than they should be, or we can ignore them.
I think it would be nice. Really, I have sometimes 2 or 3 times per year. I have a Keptn result in red, and I would say no, that this is no problem. And if I can comment that, or if I can overrule the status, that would be nice. Yeah.
I'll take a note on that as well, even though I'm pretty sure that everybody that is listening in, I see some people like Moritz and folks and Christian, they're still there. SLO result, overriding and commenting on it, yeah. Perfect. And also there's a thanks for Christian and Moritz and everybody else to also already provide some links to the Atlassian API that was from Rob, and the ability to use either our webhook service to call an API or even the job executor to call more complex things. So definitely there's enough opportunity to automate exactly what is on the screen here. Marco, I know we have a couple of more slides prepared, and I think these are some that I want to quickly talk through because when we worked very closely together on this, and we just wanted to first give a little look behind the scenes for those people that are new to Keptn. The typical way how to define the SLIs and SLOs is through an SLI YAML. In your case, you are using Dynatrace as your observability platform. This is why, as you can see on the top, you would specify a query like RT app Auftrag gesendete Aufträge. So that's the name of the SLI. And on the right side, the metric selector. That's the Dynatrace query. If you would use another data source. For instance, we have a Prometheus service. I know that right now somebody is working on a Datadog service, and I saw there's a couple of others, SLI providers. Like we have a Neoload service. So by a name of an SLI and the query that is then specific to the tool, and then you can specify in the SLO YAML. So we have a nice separation of concerns between how do I get the data and then what do I do with this data. And this is what you specify in the SLO YAML. And you have pass and warning criteria, just as you've shown earlier. But this is the way how you specify it. And Marco, I think in your case, you have all of these files, the SLI and in your code repository, right? And then you are uploading it to Keptn. And with uploading, I mean you're using the Keptn add resource function in Jenkins to just say, hey, Keptn, by the way, this is from the pipeline. Yeah, that's perfect. Awesome. So that's kind of like one example of how you're defining. I think there's another slide that we wanted to highlight. So the garbage collection metrics, because the first one was a response time metric, this one is a garbage collection. I think, Marco, from your perspective as a performance engineer, I guess these more down towards the infrastructure side are extremely important metrics, especially as behavior may change during the load test, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm-hmm.
We're working near to our data center colleagues, and yeah, this is very helpful.
Dimitri is just coming up with another question. Would splitting SLOs into group make sense when there are many indicators in the system? I guess the answer is clearly yes, like grouping them together, right? I mean, you're grouping them right now with the kind of the name abbreviations. But I know we already discussed this, Dimitri, providing groups of where you can say this SLI belongs to, let's say, front-end, back-end, or infrastructure application. And then, or like in your case, latency, availability, throughput. We have some, I think, backlog items in Keptn to group it and then also visualize the groups individually, right? Because then it makes it easier. You can say, these are my response time metrics, these are my Java runtime metrics, and then maybe there's some database metrics. So that's the point. This will also make your life probably even easier, Marco, when you go through your long list of SLIs and SLOs. You can just say like 3-4 groups.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then there's one more thing that I think we wanted to show in the slides, or maybe two more things even, but this is one. And I know, Marco, this is another item on the list that we have, because you have a lot of metrics, right? And in your case right now, are specifying very specific metrics to query exactly a specific metric from, in Dynatrace we call it an entity. And you are, when you're deploying a new version, like it's you can see on the first screen, app service 181 or PFP Finanzstatus 185. When you have a new version, this also means in your observability platform, you need to adjust the query to really get this particular deployed version. And what we have is you can, when you're triggering a Keptn sequence, you can add labels to that sequence. You can basically tell Keptn, hey, by the way, I'm the Jenkins job 17. Here's my URL. But now you can add additional metadata. These labels not only show up in the UI, but they can also be referenced in your SLI query definition, which makes it extremely powerful because you can very easily set up and also reuse SLI query definitions, and then they become very dynamic because the value then is used based on the label that you put in when you call the sequence. And the first two screenshots is really how you can do this in using, for instance, Jenkins, right? You have the option to just create a labels array, and then you can pass the labels on to functions like send start evaluation event. Yeah. Exactly. Very good. Yeah, and the last thing we had, also next steps and outlook. I mean, Marco, we've shown this earlier. I think Andreas was actually the one that where we did some remote implementing last week, where because of the upgrade that you did to Keptn 0.12, some of the Jenkins functionality, we still use the old Jenkins library, and we had to implement the configure monitoring ourselves. But thanks to Christian, who is, I think, still on the call, he just updated and provided a new Jenkins library. I think it's still currently in a pre-release. But if every one of you who is upgrading to a later Keptn version, like 0.12, I think is when the change is relevant for especially with the Dynatrace integration, please make sure you're using the latest Keptn Jenkins library. There's one breaking change. The Keptn init function no longer has the monitoring parameter, but it has an additional function called Keptn configure monitoring, which you need to call at the end after you add and upload all of your key resources like your Dynatrace conf YAML or your SLIs and SLOs. Yeah. Dimitri is just saying integration with Prometheus alert rules could be very useful as well. Yes, the Prometheus is actually taking the SLO YAML and it is automatically creating alerting rules at the time when you call the Keptn configure monitoring. So Keptn configure monitoring, if you have Prometheus and you install the Prometheus service, will send the SLO definition to the Prometheus service, and that will then create your alert rules. Just an FYI. And if you have the Keptn remediation YAML configured, exactly, because the idea here is that you want to have the alerting rules to trigger an alert, and the alert should then go back to Keptn to execute some other remediation in case your SLOs are violated. And thanks, Rob, for some examples on Azure DevOps, how you would specify those labels. That's pretty cool. Oh, it's like going on right now. There's like a lot of activity. I told Marco.
How can I see the questions? Can I see the questions?
I think you should be able to see the questions too, but I guess because you are sharing the screen, you may not be able to see it. But yeah, there's a lot of questions coming in.
Okay,
I will make sure. I will make sure that all the great links. Marco, is there anything else that you wanted to show? Anything else you wanted to mention, especially for people that might be new to Keptn?
No.
just happy.
Yeah, I'm happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Exactly. So, folks, if you want to follow up again on the Keptn project, if you want to follow up on the Keptn project, if you want to follow up with Marco or Andreas, who couldn't be with us today, here are the names and all the relevant links. And I want to keep it open for another 2 minutes to see if there's any additional questions coming in. So feel free to let us know. And yeah, Marco, I know this was, thank you for that. I know it's always challenging to do presentations like this, especially in a setting like this when you don't see people, even though we got used to presenting, but it's also not our first language. And I know you are in your job, you're not using English as regularly as some of us are doing. So this is why, thank you so much. Dankeschön for
You're
doing
welcome.
this.
Gern geschehen.
And as I said, it should not be the last, and we have a plan, or at least we talked about there's an event coming up on open source in finance. So I would love to present there with you. And this is just the first start. All right, let's see the chat. Just claps that we see from Moritz. Thank you. Has been posting more JFrog pipelines, a lot of great examples on labels, on how to specify labels in the different tools. Labels are really powerful. Yeah, so I took down a couple of things. The first thing, as a follow-up with the team, the test projects in Keptn. So you're using test projects to just play around and figure out if everything still works. The other thing was the overriding SLO key point. Then the grouping of SLOs, that is a big one, and the other one is the defaults, default paths and warnings for certain SLO I would say categories maybe, right? Or groups. That would be nice because you have a lot of the same, and then you overwrite them, but a lot of the same defaults. Yeah. Good. And Wolfgang Heider says also thank you from ex-Kollegen.
Gerne, Wolfgang.
Yeah. Hey, and Mike Kobush is also on. That's also great. Mike, he was presenting at a previous user group and also at Perform last week. And he also likes the idea of overriding SLO results because he's similar to you. Mike is executing load tests using load runner, and then using the quality gates to analyze the results. And I think if you have flaky environments or maybe flaky tests, you just want to have the ability to say, hey, actually, this should be considered good. Yeah. Good. Yeah, he says too many times he gets failed results, but things look good. Yeah, and this could just be environmental related. All right, with this, Marco, I don't want to hold you longer. I know it's late in the evening, and I also told you some of my colleagues are waiting over in the other office, and I think the beers are already cold. So this is why I'm heading over.
Okay, then cheers.
Dankeschön. Cheers.
Have a
Yeah,
nice
Prost.
evening.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye, everyone.